My name is Councillor Terry Weldon, and I am the Vice Chair of the committee and will be chairing the meeting this morning as Councillor Rivers is not available. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. Please, can I also ask that any questions are kept brief and to the point. I would like to remind ward councillors to sit separately from the committee while applications in their ward are being considered and voted on by the committee. May I ask that you switch your mobile phones and handheld devices to silent for the duration of this meeting. If the fire alarm sounds at any time during the meeting, and we are not expecting it to go off, everyone in the council chamber should leave immediately through the nearest fire exit. Please proceed calmly to the assembly point on the Berries Field across the car park. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being webcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the council chamber, it is likely that the cameras will capture your image. You are deemed to be consenting to this and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. If you are speaking at the meeting, your contribution will be recorded and broadcast. May I also remind members of the public in attendance this evening that we appreciate respect to be shown to all of those addressing the meeting. Interruptions or disrespectful behaviour will not be tolerated. And now we move to the agenda. First item, apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We have apologies from the Chair, Councillor Rivers, and no substitutes.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. I would like to ask the committee to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of May and published on the Council's website as a correct record of the meeting. Do we have your approval? Thank you. Declarations of interest?
None received prior to the meeting, Chair.
Thank you. Questions by members of the public?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. And questions from members? I advise that we have had no questions submitted by members. Any relevant updates to government guidance? And Claire?
There's no recent updates to government guidance.
Thank you. Appeals decisions. I ask members to note the appeals decisions set out in your papers and ask if there are any questions. I see no questions. Right, so we proceed. I once again ask everyone to respectfully listen to the views of all the speakers, whether they are members of this committee, ward councillors, or members of the public. No disturbance, heckling of the committee, other speakers or officers during the meeting will be tolerated, and the public may be asked to remove themselves from the chamber if this occurs. Should a break be required by any member of the committee, please indicate, and I will announce a short recess of no more than 10 minutes at the conclusion of a particular agenda item, and the webcast will be temporarily paused in that time. Councillors who are appointed to this committee sit as representatives of the whole Waverley community. Accordingly, I ask that all councillors must act fairly, openly and apolitically. Approach each planning application with an open mind and avoid preconceived opinions. Carefully weigh up all the relevant issues. Determine each application on its own individual planning merits. Avoid any undue contact with any interested parties. Ensure that the reasons for our decisions are clearly stated. Our decisions must be made in accordance with the relevant statutory framework to include the National Planning Policy Framework, NPPF, and our own planning policies and other material planning considerations. May I advise members of the committee and public speakers that they have up to 4 minutes each to address the committee, and I intend to adhere strictly to this rule so I can be fair to everyone. As set out in our public speaking procedure rules, I also remind public speakers that in making their speeches, they should be mindful of the need to avoid making public statements which could be construed to be defamatory, frivolous, or offensive, and should refrain from making allegations regarding individual officers or councillors. Speakers must address their committee to the application, and the committee may only take into account relevant planning considerations. Agenda item 8, application subject to public speaking, and the first item, 8.1, is W2026 00217 Little Heath, Lingside West, Hindhead. Dana.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Planning application WA 2026-00217 at Little Heath, Lingside West, Hindhead. It's for the erection of a new self-built detached dwelling following demolition of an existing double garage. The site location plan on the left-hand side shows the site outlined in red and the properties around it, including the new dwelling under construction to the rear. On the right-hand side, we got an aerial view of the council maps that doesn't show the dwelling yet. However, we can see clearly from the location plan where it is located. This slide shows a clear demarcation of the area. The properties to the north west, including Lingside North, Lingside West, Lingside East, and part of the northern side of Lingside South, are clearly a different path of development than the one to the south east. That includes Lingside East, South, and Grove Road. It's a clear difference in the pattern of the development. The properties are closer together, the plots are narrower. And the application site is here where the red star is. The existing and proposed block plans show the existing garage currently at Little Heath on the left-hand side, and the proposed dwelling to be constructed following the demolition of the garage. Next slide shows a comparison between neighboring properties in the area with regards to the separation distance. The separation distance between Little Heath and the proposed dwelling would be 4 meters. As we can see from the slide, there are various separation distances in the immediate area. Some are larger, some are narrower, some are directly comparable. The next slide shows another comparison of the plot widths. The resultant plot widths at Little Heath would be 13.7 meter and the proposed dwelling 14.9 meter. Again, there are various separation distances in the immediate area, some larger, some smaller, and some directly comparable. Next, we've got the existing plans of the garage to be demolished, which is a substantial garage with the area of storage in the middle. The proposed ground and first floor plans of the proposed dwelling, the proposed second floor and roof plans, and the proposed elevations. It is noted that the previous application was refused by the council and subsequently dismissed at appeal. And that this is the plan for the proposed streets under the application that was dismissed at appeal 2021-01774. The separation distance between Little Heath and the proposed dwelling was approximately 2.3 meters, and the new dwelling had a gable end design towards Little Heath. In comparison, the new dwelling will be seated 4 meters away from Little Heath, and the roof design has been amended to be hipped, therefore allowing more views towards the garden. This is a photograph taken by myself 3 days ago, and this is the view of the dwelling under construction. To be noted, the dwelling has been finished. It's just there's just some more accents, arrangements, etc. But the dwelling is up and standing. The only view of the dwelling is if you sit directly in front of the gap between Little Heath and the garage, and what you can see because of the depth, how far away it is from Little Heath, you could see these two gable ends, which looking at the look about the same height as the garage. Oh, sorry. Next one. Bear with me. This is a view taken looking towards the left, and at the moment, so Little Heath is still finishing construction, so there is the access road and tree protection fences, etc. in place. And this is a view looking right. Again, we can see the access roads, and we can see you cannot see the dwelling behind at all. This is a view from behind the garage looking towards it, and these are views towards Rosemore. So we can see there's a high, well-established, high, dense hedge that fringes the boundaries. So the views are very much obstructed by this hedge. Some more photos of the street scene where the arrows indicates is the entrance to the dwelling at the rear under construction. And again, looking from two different points on the street. Again, we can see that there's absolutely no views of the dwelling under construction. It's completely obscured by the existing vegetation. And this is a view looking directly to the rear of the side through the access road. And again, there's no views of the dwelling. You can see Little Heath and the access road towards the dwelling at the rear. And a final slide shows photos of Linkside West, which is quite a wide road with unrestricted parking on each side. And again, where the arrow points is the entrance to the new dwelling under construction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before we proceed to debate, can I just ask, are there any questions for clarity? And I repeat, questions, not observations. No? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions for clarity for the members of the committee. Could the officer tell us the extra separation that the new application gives? In other words, what was the old separation, what is the new separation, and what is the difference? That was the first question. And the second question is about the views. Now, there is talk in the report about views, increased views of the garden behind. Do you have a plan or a slide that shows the proposed dwelling of this application, the host dwelling, and then the dwelling that's being built at the back? In other words, what is the increased view going to be of?
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen again. So the previous application, which was refused and dismissed at appeal, had the separation distance between Little Heath and the new property of about 2.3 meters. And also the design of the roof, it was a gable ended towards Little Heath. So it obscured some of the views. In comparison, the separation distance has been increased to 4 meters, so nearly doubled. And also the roof has been now hipped, which allows for views towards the rear. Now, I appreciate this is proposed street scene without the dwelling at the rear, because that dwelling was under construction when the application was submitted. However, it's now finished, and I have visited the site very recently. And I looked from all angles and walked all around it. This is the view of the house. So it's not on a plan, but looking at this photograph, you are able to see what is visible at the moment. Moving obviously the garage at the moment only has the separation is about 80 centimeters. So the new dwelling would be 4 meters away. So it will be further to the right. So there will be some further views of the gable ends, but that you can't see them here. They're further, even further behind of some gable end projections. But most importantly, once the dwellings are going to be completed and the landscaping is going to be implemented, there are going to be landscaping on the boundary between Little Heath and the new dwelling. So that planting would be seen before the house. The house is further in the background. So while the house would be visible, but only, as you can see in this photograph here, as the planting and the landscaping scheme will commence, and also the species of plants would grow, there's going to be less and less views, and the views of the plants will be prominent. Thank you.
Councillor Gale.
I just have a query on car parking, actually. I notice that both of the dwellings, the new and Little Heath, will be 3-bedroom, and it should be 2.5 approximately parking spaces per dwelling. But I see Little Heath will have 2 spaces and the new dwelling will have 3. So I think what they're trying to say is that will be 5 between both properties. But can you do that? I mean, there won't always be 5 spaces for those 2 properties. If one is sold off, one will only have 2 and one will have 3. So I'm worried about the parking in the road. Could somebody just clarify if that's a possibility?
So members, as you know, you can't have half a parking space. So whilst that may be within guidance, you obviously clearly can't deliver half a parking space. So this has been an approach to try and accommodate parking across the 2 sites, acknowledging that you can't have 2 halves of or half a car. Obviously, and some of the photographs show that there appears to be parking on the road at the moment. There are no yellow lines, and it isn't an offence to park on the road.
Yeah, if I could just come back on that, because I noticed Surrey Highways have actually mentioned about the turning of vehicles within the site, and there doesn't appear to be room for that to exit in the forward motion.
Surrey County Council Highways raised no objection, and they are satisfied with the parking arrangements and the turning areas. They did not raise any objection on this.
Before we go on, I just want to point out, we have a couple of people standing in the visitors gallery. You're welcome to come down and sit at the back if you wish. All right, thank you. All right. Yes, Councillor White.
Forgive me, I probably missed the relevant detail, but do we have a plot plan which shows the 3 plots adjacent to each other. Could we see that again, please?
We don't have a plot plan as such, but we can see from the location plan where the new dwelling is at the rear, and the new dwelling that's just been finished constructing, and the proposed dwelling would be in place of the garage here. The actual garage is wider than the proposed dwelling is, would be, as you could see from the, this one shows, sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
So we could see the situation at the moment on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, the new dwelling to the rear, the proposed dwelling under this application, and Little Heath with the increased separation distances. Also, this plan shows what I was talking about earlier. The boundary is going to be planted with mature tall hedging, so that will obscure views further once it's implemented.
I think we should now move on to the actual debate discussion. Who would like to begin? Oh, sorry. Before we do that, my mistake, obviously. We do have a number of speakers. We have, first of all, let me see, Barry Wyatt. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Our strong objection to this application is on the material issues of harm to the character and street scene of the area and rejection of garden grabbing and infilling. We're both bemused and frustrated that this is before you this evening with an officer recommendation for approval when there is a clear precedent on this plot that now appears to have been disregarded. The key question is whether the revised scheme overcomes the character and street scene concerns identified by the planning inspector in 2023. In our view, it does not. The inspector's concern was not the building's design or dimensions, but its effect on the character of the area. The later appeal allowed a backland development only because of its secluded form would not erode the spacious character of Little Heath and the surrounding streetscape. The current proposal is not materially different. It would be prominent in the street scene and would erode the generous spacing between dwellings that characterises Linkside West. Large detached houses, generous plots, separation and mature landscaping. If you compare Linkside with the Great Austins area of Farnham, I'm sure you would conclude that Linkside is Hindhead's equivalent. The NPPF, the Waverley Local Plan, the Hazlemere Design Statement and Neighbourhood Plan all stress character, design, layout and density. The design statement does accept garden and infill development, but only where there is adequate garden space, parking and no harm to character. We believe this application fails all these policy tests. The construction of a house on this plot was refused by Waverley in 2021, who wrote, "The proposed development on this site would conflict with the pattern of development in the immediate area to the detriment of the street scene and overall prevailing character." The subsequent appeal concluded, "The proposed development would be harmful to the character and appearance of the area. This harm would be long-lasting and would be contrary to the objectives of the framework." They ascribed this substantial weight. So what has changed? This is the same plot and location, so why have Waverley now decided that they and the inspectorate were wrong before? Why have the proposed street scene and layout plan been included in the officer's report when they do not show the undesirable backland development? This is not an accurate picture. The report refers to separation distance and views to rear gardens, yet there is now a house behind that will dominate that view. This property is on Linkside West, which was a material consideration in the previous decision and appeal, yet that view has now been softened by comparisons with the wider area. The layout plan shows that the properties in the Linksides are set further back, all have garages, even the new house has a garage, and yet these two properties would fall short of minimum parking provision. We note references to possible claims for costs if permission is refused. I trust you will treat these threats with the contempt they deserve. The possibility of costs, obviously not a material planning consideration. There is no doubt in our mind that this development would harm the character and street scene of this area, and we cannot comprehend how the planning team can now present a view opposite to the one they set out in 2021. The 23 appeal stated the NPPF sets out the need to maintain an area's prevailing character and setting. We appreciate that the framework continues to evolve, but not to the extent that what was once black is now white. We urge you, the decision makers, to listen to the large volume of objections and not undo the work to date to protect these special low-density residential areas from this type of invasive development. This is not simply about a pitched roof versus a gabled end. It is a far more fundamental planning decision, and we urge you to stand firm for the long-term good of the area, its residents and your electorate by refusing this application on the grounds of harm to the character and street scene of the area and rejection of garden grabbing and infilling. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, please, we said in the beginning we do not want interruptions or heckling. That includes applause. Please, no applause. Right, our next speaker is Mr. Graysbrook.
Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak. Firstly, as Barry points out, the case officer claims that the proposed street scene will be in keeping with the surrounding area, as can be seen from Figure 2. Yet this image omits the house under construction behind Little Heath and its access road, both clearly visible on Google Earth. It is misleading on a crucial point. Please also consider cars. The original Little Heath would lose its garage. The third new house will have none. The street scene should therefore also show the 5 planned cars that will be entering, parking, exiting, manoeuvring, and passing each other within that similar frontage, within that limited frontage, also those using the new drive at the back. Taken together, how can the street view remain in keeping with the existing character of the area? It should surely reveal the cramped infill and increased congestion highlighted in Hazlemere Council's objections. Second point, condition 2 from our county council requires cars to enter and leave the development in forward gear. Their need to turn clearly adds to the pressure on this very limited space. Little Heath is assigned 2 car spaces, but turning would only be possible by backing onto the access drive to the rear house, raising the question of what happens if that drive is already in use. As for plot 2, the layout shows 3 spaces, but it appears one may need to become a turning space if cars are to reverse and turn. Even then, compliance with condition 2 is doubtful because turning space will be so tight, and it's also relevant that the grass verge bordering the public pavement belongs to the council and may not be encroached. My third point is scrutiny. In his rebuttal to objections, the applicant stated that the concerns raised by third parties are unfounded and do not stand up to scrutiny. Well, if we residents are third parties, well, so be it, but the points above suggest little scrutiny applied in advancing his case. Moreover, many inconsistencies of fact and measurement raised in thoughtful objections are dismissed with no communication with residents or third parties, as we're called. Talk of scrutiny. At this stage, I'll raise one issue relating to our property, Rosemore, because we're cited in the reports, but mainly it will affect others if this application is approved and sets a precedent. Neither applicant nor Waverley Planning have ever addressed our main concern, the overbearing mass of a house 9.4 metres tall, close to and overlooking our 3-metre hedge, directly facing our lawn and some essential living quarters. We try to describe, also illustrate this with photographs, but receive no acknowledgement. Section 12 of the report refutes any detrimental impact on Rosemore's amenities, blandly referring to the established boundary treatment and the size and positioning of Rosemore's amenity space. This is hardly an explanation. There's certainly no scrutiny of our comments. There was no site visit. Our concerns could not be properly scrutinised without walking the property. If the planning inspector considered a site visit in 2023, why not now? In conclusion, I join Barry in his appeal to you to listen to the many submissions from 48 households and their families, 80 in all, which clearly express valid collective concerns about this invasive proposal. It's one house too many. Its mass cramping and attendant traffic density threaten the distinctive local character of our area. So please reject this application. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Matt Smith.
Chair, very quickly before my time starts, can I raise a matter of order from the notification letter which came out, which said it was 4 minutes per item for support. The supports have just had 8 minutes to speak.
It's not in fact 4 minutes per item, it's 4 minutes per speaker. We are permitted 2 speakers on the side. I understand the regulations were changed some time ago.
I've got the letter in front of me which says 4 minutes per item, not per speaker.
So, members, just to confirm, our public speaking policy is 4 minutes per speaker. We will review if the letter is misleading in any way, but that is within the Constitution, and you have 4 minutes per speaker with a maximum number of speakers.
Again, it says on the letter 4 minutes per item. If we had been aware that we would have 8 minutes in total, we would have brought along somebody else.
I apologise if you've been misled. I'm not sure what letter is that you're referring to, but perhaps we can discuss this later. But for now, we have 4 minutes per speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. My name is Matt Smith from D&M Planning Limited, based here in Godalming. I am a fully chartered member of the RTPI and have been involved in the various submissions at Littleheath over the years. I'm very familiar with the site, its planning history and the local area. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank officers for their effort and work in reaching their positive recommendation on the proposal. I trust that members will follow the recommendation of their professional officers and grant planning permission for the application. I would very quickly like to highlight one matter of clarification from the officer's report. Under the subheader of the principle of development, the report states the site is not within one of the 4 main settlements that policy SP2 of the development plan seeks to direct development. I would just highlight that footnote 3 of policy SP2 states that for the purposes of the policy, and I quote, the built-up area of Hazelmere includes Beacon Hill and Hindhead. Accordingly, noting that the officer has found the site to be sustainably located, it should be regarding as going further than this. Indeed, the proposal is an example of exactly the sort of location in which the council's spatial strategy supports new housing, putting it within one of the 4 main areas that are supposed to be the focus of new development. As per the officer's report, the proposal follows the previous determination on the site, including at the appeal. The MPPG, which case law has recently confirmed has been given the same material weighting as the MPPF, is clear that should the planning authority continue to pursue objections that are otherwise addressed at appeal, that this would constitute unreasonable behaviour. In dismissing the previous appeal on site, the inspector raised concerns about the then proposed dwelling in this location based on the assessment of its spacing with the other plots and the impacts on the character of the area. No other harm from the development, including impacts on neighbours, highways, the general design approach, ecology, etc., were raised by the inspector. There has been no material change in circumstance in the interim. As is clearly articulated within the committee report, the current proposal has been significantly amended to address these comments. The spacing between Littleheath and the proposed dwelling, and as well to the boundary, have been increased. Significantly, the spread of development at first floor and into the roofscape has also been reduced, providing for greater spacing at both footprint and above across the development site. The impact of such is not just an increase to the physical spacing, but also to the sense of spacing that will be experienced in the area. The inspector previously found the design approach to otherwise be suitable for the area, which accommodates a wide range of unit types and form. There has been no material change to the locality that would justify any divergence from this judgment, nor is there on any other matter. The comments of neighbours are noted, but the determination of the council is whether the proposal accords with the development plan, which is clearly the case in this circumstance. The proposal will deliver significant benefits, most notably for the delivery of much needed self-build housing. This is against the backdrop of the chronic and sustained under-delivery of housing in the borough, with the equivalent land supply being only 1.28 years, or just over 15 months' worth. The proposed dwelling would deliver a high standard of accommodation exceeding both the national space standards and those standards set by the plan. It would not result in harm to the amenity of neighbouring properties and would provide suitable parking provision. Through the suggested conditions, the proposal will deliver ecological enhancements, suitable protection for trees, as well as delivering a highly sustainable build. On the flip side, the committee report does not identify any harm from the proposal, which needs to be considered in the balance, yet alone in the context of a tilted balance. This is consistent with the inspector's previous decision. We therefore respectfully request that members approve the application, recognising the professional judgment of their officers and that this has overcome the single sole concern raised by the previously appointed inspector. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have two councillors speaking. First of all, Councillor Jerome Davidson, who will speak on behalf of the Haslemere Town Council.
Thank you, Chair. As you correctly point out, I'm speaking on behalf of Haslemere Town Council. My apologies to residents. Councillor Carter is unavoidably being detained in hospital. So he can't speak, which is a bit disappointing, as he'd been able to attend the meetings which you'd had to discuss this particular planning application. I'm going to reflect what the Town Council Planning Committee discussed when this came up before them. And I think what we concluded was pretty much what the previous planning inspector was concerned about, and which has been elaborated by the two speakers on behalf of the local residents. And that's the overdevelopment and out of keeping of the distinctive local nature of the Linkside area. And our view was that this, perhaps we've misinterpreted it, but our view was that this was out of keeping with the Waverley Local Plan Part 1. And the policy is, I think, TD1, which is the townscape and design. We felt that when this planning application came up, that the application wasn't that dissimilar to an earlier one that we had seen a couple of years previously. There'd been a little bit of shrinkage around the size of the house, but essentially there was no material change. And it's also, we felt that it was out of keeping with our own Haslemere neighbourhood plan. I think that's H6.1, paragraph 4, which I'm slightly more familiar with than the local plan. So it's the building which is out of keeping with what we'd expect in the Linkside area. Moving on to the other issue which was raised, which is that of parking, we came to much the same conclusion. And I think Dr. Jenkinson, if I remember, had responded to the rebuttal from the developer about parking in Linkside. I go down there regularly to walk my dog in the woods at the north end of the area. Rarely see more than one car parked down there on West Side. I have seen more than one during the daytime, but those are construction workers working on the back end of the Little Heath development. So I think that someone may need to be looking at a little bit of checking on the eyesight, basically. I agree with what, although it wasn't pointed out in our own discussion at the Town Council meeting, with the observations from the two speakers from the local residents in that trying to get 2.5 cars in per site. I can imagine there'll be lots of legal disputes in the future, but that's not really a material consideration, I guess. I would strongly recommend that this is refused, and with the full support of the Town Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Our next speaker is Councillor Julian Spence, who is the ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, yes, I'm Julian Spence. I'm the ward councillor for Hindhead and Beacon Hill. Members, you've heard, I think, two very eloquent descriptions of this project from the local residents. Mr. Wyeth has particularly described how the previous application for this site was refused and dismissed at appeal in January 23, with the inspector at that time finding the proposed house would harmfully erode, and he described it, the spacious, verdant character of the area. Members, I would suggest that this appeal judgment should be your starting point. And as Mr. Wyeth said, you need to be asking yourselves what has changed and what has not. Let's dwell on a couple of points on that. First of all, the site. Has that changed? No, it hasn't. It is exactly the same site as considered by the inspector. He quoted the original officer's report, which I'm going to quote to you now. The application site is located within a residential area characterized by tree-lined streets and detached dwellings in fairly large plots perpendicular to the street. The space around the dwellings contributes to the verdant appearance of the locality. That was the officer. But the new officer's report seeks to dismiss this by redefining the area. You saw a map with a big blue line on it, splitting the northwest of Linkside from the southeast and associating the part of Linkside West where this application lies with Grove Road. Members, I would put it to you that that is a totally artificial construct. The site is still exactly the same, and Little Heath is intrinsically part of Linkside. The inspector's comments on this should, in my opinion, carry a lot more weight in your deliberations than those of the officer's report. Secondly, let me turn to the design. Yes, there have been some changes, but not, in my opinion, the significant ones that the developer told you about. The separation distance between the two properties has been marginally increased. There's been a decrease in the width of the new house and some modest alterations to the roof design. I suggest to you these are tweaks, but they're tweaks that the officer now says makes this application acceptable. They justify the separation by saying that a number of the properties in the area benefit from greater separation distance. You saw some maps. But members, they are only able to say that because they have changed what they mean by the area. And I would repeat, the inspector's comments should stand. They also have got, say the new design would allow views towards the rear garden. And you saw an image that they put up that's in the report, showing a truly verdant perspective. Members, do not be swayed by that picture. The gap between the two proposed houses is not going to be filled by trees in full leaf, but by the built form of the new two-storey house that's been approved on appeal. Members, do these design changes really transform an unacceptable design into an acceptable design that maintains the distinctive character of the area? I would suggest to you that they are mere tweaks and the fundamentals are still the same. Finally, members, some of the speakers have reminded you, and indeed the developer alluded to it, that the infill application that you refused was overturned on appeal and costs awarded against the council. Members, you must not be swayed by this. This is a completely different application. You must adjudge the application on its merits. And if you feel, as I do, that this application still harmfully erodes the spacious, verdant character of the area, you must refuse it on the same grounds as the inspector did in January 23. Members, Linkside, like Great Austin's area of Farnham, is special. Its character and setting must be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, who would like to begin? Councillor Coburn.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As Great Austin's has been mentioned, I was going to mention it anyway, so it was interesting to hear one of the speakers say two things that I was going to say. One was that I was surprised to see this back in front of the committee so soon, and the other was how similar I find Linkside to Great Austin's. For the Great Austin's, we throw around, I should say, the word unique a little too frequently. But Great Austin's is unique in the Bourne. It's the only area that is grid sort of set out on a grid, and it has certain characteristics exactly the same as Linkside. It's so important that we protect these. In Great Austin's, we put together a preservation group, which eventually turned into a conservation area. But the reason we did it was because there were one or two bits of inappropriate development creeping in that was eroding that character. It doesn't take much. And if you have got as we have here, a spacious, verdant character, as the inspector put it, characterized by wide plots, by lots of greenery, then as you gradually chip away at that, you gradually chip away at what makes it special. We are under great pressure, nobody denies that, but we are all under great pressure not only to build, but also to preserve and protect. And if we allow our special areas to be the subject of inappropriate development, what chance do we have of ending up with any special areas in the borough whatsoever? So I just think this is an application that is unacceptable despite the small changes. I think that it does erode the character of the area, but I think also to me, it's not just the building that does that. It is the spacing. It is the lack of normal parking. You're turning what is a special area into an area, a development area with no special particular qualities. And we can't afford to do that. We're under so much pressure that these special areas have to have the consideration they deserve. So I'm with everybody that's spoken recently. I think we have to protect the character of this area. I can see why, you know, if you look down the Grove Road, you can see a slightly different pattern of development, but this is Linkside West. It is very much part of the Linkside development, and it's far too precious to throw away because somebody has decided that 2.3 meters, was it, going to 4 meters is enough of a distance. It doesn't change the separation at all. It is just a tweak. The parking urbanizes something which, although it's a residential area, again, following the pattern in Great Austin's, we try to keep the car a little bit hidden in these areas so that what dominates is the space and the greenness. And we have to protect that. You know, we just cannot allow this sort of chipping away at these particularly special areas. So I'm surprised it's come back to us. I'm disappointed that it's come back to us with a recommendation for granting. I don't think it's good enough. I don't think the changes are enough. I wish the inspectors will be more specific. Then we'll know whether sort of, you know, a tiny bit is acceptable. But I'm sorry, from my point of view, this is wholly unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keane and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Well, for those of us that know Linkside, it is a very special and open area. And as Councillor Coburn has said, we must protect these areas. We have in the past had applications for Linkside, and they have been fought quite hard by the town council. It's in our plan, and we want to keep these areas as they are. problem is, I understand that we need housing, but there are places where we can put housing and there is places where we can't. And this is an area where we can't. We can't put this in, it's cramped. And it does take away from the whole development of the area. It's a shame in a way that we couldn't have had a site visit for this. For these councillors that don't know the area, sometimes a site visit really does help people to understand exactly what they are talking about. And we can sit here and look at the pictures. I can remember back when there was one on the Hindhead Road, which showed a flat area and it was like that. So sometimes a site visit can help members, and I think this possibly was one of them. But for my mind, I think this development could be the start of change to Linkside, and this is something that I really could not support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I was in the Hindhead area last week, so I did make a visit to Linkside West and the surrounding streets, and I was immediately impressed by the spaciousness of the area and its verdant nature. The houses are set back from the road, the houses are well separated, and there are virtually no vehicles parked on the streets, adding further to the spaciousness. But when it comes to this application, I find myself conflicted. On the one hand, the officer's report finds the applicant has answered the issues in terms of plot widths, spacing between plot 2 and the host building, as well as opening up a vista to the rear. But on the other hand, the inspector states in his appeal decision that the NPPF does require making optimal use of potential sites. But then he goes on to say that in paragraph 124 of the NPPF, it also mentions the need to maintain an area's prevailing character and setting, including residential gardens. To my mind, whilst plot 2 dwelling proposal perhaps might respond to the issues, excuse me, I mentioned earlier, it could be argued that its presence at all conflicts with the NPPF. If this was a completely fresh application with no history attached, should or would we be minded to approve it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm very much of the opinion of Councillor Clark. I think this is a matter of balance, and there are, to my mind, good arguments on either side. What I think will sway me, subject to any further comments by members, is two things. First of all, the appeal decision, which rightly has a great weight on what we're discussing now, did actually dismiss two of the grounds of appeal and only accepted the grounds that dwelling on plot 2 would cause harm as to the width of the proposed dwelling and its close positioning to the existing dwelling. To my mind, I know Linkside. I know it quite well. I've been there many times. The changes to the application, as opposed to the previous one, have responded to that with a greater separation between the two houses and a more interesting roof line with a hip roof, etc. And so, to my mind, it is not that out of keeping with with the rest of that area of Linkside. And the second, the second condition which carries weight with me is, in fact, the national planning regime, as we all know, has changed significantly since the last appeal decision. The fact is that reading the officer's report, we should have a 5-year supply of housing. Under the law, we don't. It's only 1.28, and that is falling far short. Therefore, we have a duty under the law to try and accelerate as much as possible the supply of housing. Okay, so one house is not going to make a significant difference one way or the other, but nevertheless, it is a material consideration. So for both, for my mind, subject to what other members say, those two consideration on balance, and it's not an easy decision, they outweigh the objections to this building on this site. So I will vote for the application, unless of course I hear something in the next quarter of an hour which causes me to change my mind.
Thank you. I haven't seen any other hands. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? No, I'm not going to come down one side or the other. I just want to point out what, to my mind, is the critical point. As you've just heard, the appeal decision, Chairman would dismiss the appeal on one issue only, and I quote from the officer's report. The impact on the character and appearance of the area. The officer believes that the objection has been dealt with. We've heard from the residents they don't believe so. That, I think, is the critical thing we need to think about. Thank you. Let us then proceed to the vote. The recommendation we have is that, subject to conditions, permission be granted.
Point of order,
Sorry.
Chairman. I think the local member has a chance to sum up.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard some very important contributions. I think you've heard how special this area is. I think the key thing you have to decide is whether you want to keep these areas as special areas. Yes, we do need to build houses, as Councillor Keane said, but we don't have to build them here. I think that's an important point. I think the other one, and it's obviously has divided councillors here, is whether these changes are, as I said in my opening comments, tweaks, or whether they are significant and material enough to have changed the overall position. I would again submit to you that they are mere tweaks. The fundamentals are still the same as when the inspector made his judgment. Thank you.
Just give me a moment. I need a
So members, just before you go to the vote, I just want to just reflect on a few of the comments that have come out from the speakers and in your discussion. So members, the appeal decision is obviously a material consideration, and there is nothing in the appeal decision that says development should not happen in this area or on this site, or that it would be so harmful to make it unacceptable. At which point my computer's just flashed off. Bear with me 2 minutes. Right. So the inspector at paragraph 6 of the appeal decision, which is a poignant paragraph, says that the proposed dwelling identifies as 2 plots would replace an existing garage, although it would be sited in broadly the same position as the existing structure. And bear in mind, you have already got a substantial structure within that street scene in the form of a large double, triple garage, however you might describe it. It would be sited in broadly the same position as the existing structure. It is 2 stories in height and would span across most of the width of this plot. And then there's a little bit further, and then the width of the proposed dwelling in plot 2 and its close position to the existing dwelling would be out of keeping with the plot widths and the spacing to the sides of the building of the other properties in the area. And the proposed dwelling in plot 2 would also be obstructive views towards rear garden areas, reducing that spacious the spaciousness of the area. So members, your decision this evening is clearly, as Councillor Spence has set out, not is the principle of development acceptable or unacceptable, because the inspector has not said development or the erection of a dwelling on this site is unacceptable. It is whether or not the reduced size of the dwelling and reconfiguration is sufficient to provide the spaciousness that the inspector referred to make this acceptable development within this area. The issues around parking simply was not an issue within the appeal, and clearly assessments against a development that has already been permitted, i.e. the development to the rear, and permitted on an overturned recommendation with very similar discussions as I'm hearing again this evening about this development. That development was allowed, and we did have an award of cost because it was considered unreasonable that we had refused that for the reasons we did. Members, I also just want to make comment on the relationship between the doing a sustainable reason for refusal and therefore being able to defend an application of costs, and whether you as a committee have a responsibility in making your decision to have that in mind. One of the speakers has clearly said that the award of cost is not material. Unfortunately, it is, because if we are in a position where we are refusing permission without good reason, then we are open to costs, and therefore you are not behaving responsibly as a planning committee, and that is just a matter of fact, not debate. So members, it is a judgment this evening, but I think the judgment is simply, has this reduced the size of the dwelling and therefore created enough space to retain the character as within the area to make this acceptable or not, and not whether the development, the principle of development is acceptable or not. Also, and perhaps not the right moment to remind members, but there has been reference from a number of speakers this evening about site visits. Obviously, members, you are fully aware that within our own constitution, it is open to members to request a site visit if they feel that they are not familiar enough with the site, to require the whole of the planning committee to visit the site, though obviously members, you have a responsibility as an individual member of this committee to ensure that you feel suitably well armed to make a decision coming into the chamber, and can obviously visit the site in advance of this evening's meeting. So members, thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Chair. May I'd like to raise a point of order, if I may. I'd like to thank the head of planning for quoting from the inspector's report. However, the quote missed a very important part, paragraph 9, page 2 of his decision.
Sorry, can I interrupt? What is the point of order?
Missing an important part of the inspector's decision, which is very important.
I'm not sure that's a point of order.
This will only take a minute. He says,
Is that a point of order?
these factors will not overcome the concerns I have identified in relation to the
With respect, Councillor Clark, I don't believe that is a point of order. That is continuing a debate.
No, I'm not debating. I'm reading a part of
Yes,
the
I know, but
report.
it's not a point of order.
Yeah, well, let's call it what you like. It's a contribution.
We've already had the debate. Can we now move to the vote, please? Councillor Gale.
I'm sorry, but I think Councillor Clark is correct
No.
in what we've just
Can you
been told
clarify
by
which
the
is the
Assistant
point of
Director of
order
Planning.
in terms of our standing orders? What is the point of order in question? Councillor Keane.
Chairman, before we all get excited, I do believe that although it's not a point of order, I do believe that if something's been missed out, then I think we should hear it because it doesn't seem right.
Okay. Right, people, thank you. Sorry for that little technical delay. We are now ready to proceed with agenda item 8.2, which is for 00013 Grange Park, Cranley. So this is Sarah. Dana, you're doing it. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Application WA 2026-00013 at 6 Grange Park, Cranley. It's for alterations and extension to existing double garage to include a parapet. Oops. Apologies, I couldn't see that because I've got something else on the screen. So there are extensions and alterations to existing double garage to add a single-story rear extension that would infill the area to the rear here. As we could see better from the next plan, this is the extent of the extension. And it's also proposed to add a parapet to the front elevation. Again, that's the extension. And raise the parapet in the front of the elevation and extend it across to provide an entrance porch area. These are there's some photographs of the site. This is the application site. It's views from the front. This is the garage at the moment, seen from different angles. And this is the application site as seen from the rear. The area to be extended, it's this area here. So it's an infill extension that will align with the existing rear elevation and align with the existing side elevation of the garage. It basically would infill this gap. These are some views from the street scene. Oops. Apologies for that. I'll go back to it. I went a bit too far. So the proposed floor plans show the infill of the extension. On the left-hand side, we got the existing. On the right-hand side, we got the proposed at the ground floor level. And the roof plan shows that the extension will be to the same height as the existing garage and will have a flat roof design to match the existing garage. This is the current view of the house and the proposed view with a raised parapet. It's important to note that this is the initial application included a first floor element that was removed following discussions with officers. So this is the amended application just for a single story rear extension. However, due to the number of objections received on the previous scheme, the application is brought to committee. Thank you.
Are there any questions for clarity first? Right. Speakers, we have first of all, Tim Hunt.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tim Hunt, and I've been asked by my neighbours in Grange Park to speak upon their behalf this evening. This planning application has been ongoing for many months and has been the cause of considerable anxiety amongst the Grange Park community. So I would like to acknowledge that the applicants have made significant changes to their original proposals, and the removal of the first floor element has addressed many of the concerns previously raised regarding excessive height, visual dominance, and the impact on the established bungalow character of the cul-de-sac. For that reason, residents are no longer opposing the revised application and proposals in principle. However, we do ask the committee to carefully consider conditions that could attach to any consent which is granted. In particular, they are approval of external materials to preserve some conformity with the building form and appearance of the surrounding bungalows. Secondly, a construction management plan concerning contractor parking, deliveries, working hours, dust and noise control. Thirdly, a retention of the applicant's domestic parking off-road. A restriction on use of roof areas as terraces or balconies, and the garages to remain for parking or storage use only. However, whilst the revised scheme is now single story and the residents do remain concerned, that any future incremental alterations could gradually undermine the very issues that have led to the objections to the original proposals, namely a second story being built over time. We therefore respectfully request that the committee impose one further robust safeguard by the removal of permitted development rights, so that any future construction must require formal consent. Now, we concede that the committee should not remove PD rights simply because neighbours are worried. But I think in this case, there are stronger and more cogent arguments that apply directly on a legal basis to a planning decision of this nature. And they are that the original application was for a two-story dwelling, and that application was refused. The revised application may be approved only because it is single-story. And finally, many residents have consistently raised concern concerning upward extension. And so therefore we respectfully suggest the condition is justified along these lines, that the development is considered acceptable only upon the basis that it remains a bungalow in order to preserve the character of the cul-de-sac. That is all I have to say, Chair, and I thank you and the committee for considering our comments.
Thank you. The second speaker is Thomas Andrews.
So, good evening, Chair and members. My name is Thomas Andrews, and I am speaking on behalf of the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Adams. Firstly, I would like to thank the case officer and the council for the constructive discussions that have taken place throughout the course of this application. Members may recall that the original application's proposal sought to create a two-storey dwelling. Following review by senior officers, concerns were raised regarding the scale, massing and impact on the character and the immediate area. Rather than pursuing the scheme, my clients listened carefully to the concerns raised by both officers and local residents. They took the decision to substantially revise the proposal and remove the first floor element entirely. The application before you today is their fundamentally different proposal. What is now proposed is a single-storey dwelling retaining the bungalow character of the site and responding directly to the concerns that were previously identified. The revised scheme includes modest alterations to the existing garage, a front porch feature, and a single-storey rear extension. The scale of development has significantly reduced, and the building remains comfortable within the established character of this small cul-de-sac of bungalows. Importantly, the officer report concludes that the previous reasons for refusal have now been addressed and that the revised proposal is acceptable in its own right. Members will also note that many of the comments received following the reconsultation no longer object to the proposal itself. Instead, concern focus on what might happen in the future through further alterations. The application before you today, however, is not for future extension or additional storey. It's for the single-storey scheme shown on the approved plans. The officer report addresses those concerns directly and confirmed that any future development would require its own assessment and consideration. Furthermore, a condition is recommended preventing the roof area from being used as a balcony or amenity space. In planning terms, the revised proposal has been assessed against the development plan, the Cranley Neighbourhood Plan, the Residential Extensions SPD and National Policy. The conclusion reached by officers is clear. The proposal is of an appropriate scale, respects the character of the area, preserves neighbouring amenity, retains adequate parking provision and does not result in the loss of bungalow accommodation. This application demonstrates exactly how the planning process should work. Concerns were identified, the applicant engaged positively with officers, meaningful amendments were made and the revised proposal has been brought forward that addresses those concerns. For those reasons and in accordance with the officer recommendation, I respectfully ask members to support the application and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Councillor Hussaini.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for the planning officer. Under the objection section, there's a mention that the residents expressed concerns that the dwelling is being used for business purposes. The only reply that I managed to find through the papers is one sentence that says there's no indication of the site being used for commercial purposes. Just how was that determined? Were people asked what's going on? Because obviously if a business was to operate there, with it being a cul-de-sac, there'll be issues with parking and traffic on the road. Thanks.
So just in response to that question, site visits were carried out to the site. If it had been established that there was a business operating, then that would have been a matter for us to investigate under our force enforcement part of our planning service, and that would be dealt with accordingly. But members, for you this evening, what you have to consider is whether or not the extension that is being proposed is acceptable.
Right, are we still on questions, Councillor McLeod?
Thank you, Chairman. I was happy with almost everything both the speakers said, but I didn't understand the logic behind the request to remove permitted development rights. As far as I know, you can't build a second storey through permitted development rights. If the applicant wants to do that, he'll have to come back and apply again. I don't see that worry should be a reason to remove other permitted development rights, which all of the other neighbours would have. So I just don't understand the logic behind that, and I wouldn't agree to it unless I'm wrong, as advised by the Chief Planning Officer.
Members, in terms of imposing conditions, you need to ensure that they meet the 6 tests, which you're all familiar with, and I can see no reason for removing permitted development rights or that it would meet the test to do so. Also, having looked at the floor plans and the roof plan, I'm not sure how you could even get onto the flat roof section to use as a terrace unless you went up by a ladder. So as you've observed, it wouldn't meet the tests of reasonableness to take away permitted development rights. Similarly, members, just whilst we were on the subject of the suggested additional conditions, I would suggest members that putting in an environmental construction management plan wouldn't be proportionate to the development that's been proposed. Though members, we would obviously recommend that, are you minded to grant permission tonight, that there is control over the materials that this extension would be constructed in.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chairman. I think now that we've had various questions, I think most of mine have been answered. I mean, we've got here an application now, which strikes me as everyone seems to be happy with, apart from possible things in the future, but the planning system covers that by making people come in and ask for another application. So thank you very much. My question on PD rights and all these things have already been answered.
Thank you.
I think
Councillor
this
Monroe,
is-
do you still have a question?
Yes, indeed. Following on from Councillor MacLeod, I wasn't crystal clear. Are we allowed to make a condition, if we wish to remove permitted development rights?
So my advice to you, committee, is that that would not meet the 6 tests that you need to meet to impose conditions, and therefore my advice would be that you do not add that.
So that's a no.
That is my advice to you. Obviously, you are the decision makers.
Right, we now move to discussion. Who would like to begin? Councillor Coburn.
I don't think there is any discussion. I mean, as far as I can see, you know, they've addressed the neighbours' concerns. As long as the conditions that we have got are applied properly, and I'm sure they will be, then I can't see the point of debating this at any length. Thank you, Chairman.
Is subject to permission. I'm not sure. I'm with you.
What are you voting?
Voting that subject. I'm not voting at all. I'm just.
Why not?
Well, I said when the lights come on, vote, and you said not ready.
Yeah, I've changed.
So we are now ready to
Yeah.
vote. Okay, thank
Vote
you.
if you,
If the lights are on, please vote.
Thank you. That's. Thank you. That's 13 in favour, no abstentions and none against, so that's carried.
Thank you. Right, and we can now proceed to Denby Road. Just got to find the correct page for it. Right, agenda item 8.3, which is 1 Denby Road, Haslemere, number WA 2026 00218. Thank you. Thank you. A reminder, this is my ward. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to ask Councillor Blesson, where he is, to take over.
Is everyone in agreement that Councillor Spence takes the? Thank you.
Thank you, member. So we are now at agenda item 8.3, WA 26-00218. It's for the erection of a double garage with room above to provide ancillary accommodation with a link canopy to the dwelling at 1 Denby Road, Hazelmere. So over to you, Justin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So this application has been referred to Planning Committee due to the number of objections received. It relates to 1 Denbigh Road, Hazelmere, GU 27 3AP. The proposal is for the erection of a double garage with a room above to provide ancillary accommodation with a link canopy to dwelling. So here presented before you is the site location plan. So the image on the right, note it's not fully representative of the current form of development. This is the application I'm dealing with right now. So the image on the right, so it's not fully representative of the current form of development. The application dwelling is substantially complete. And as you can see on the image on the left, the application site was initially part of a larger site, which has recently been subdivided into 3 separate sites. 1 Flint House, Aprilwood, and the application site being 1 Denbigh Road. The application site is also situated to the north side of Scotland Lane and to the west of Denbigh Road, and also within the developed area of Hazelmere. So here you can see the existing block plan. You can see the proposed block plan. So as you can see, the proposed location of the garage is located to the north of the site. As shown also are the separation distances from surrounding boundaries to the west, north and east. So site photographs taken from the side rear curtilage of the application site. So the image on the far left shows views towards the west onto neighbouring properties, Aprilwood and Flint House. The image in the middle shows views directly towards the north onto neighbouring property High Pines, and the image on the far right are views towards the east onto Denbigh Road. So as you can see, we have the proposed ground floor plan, proposed first floor stroke roof plan, existing proposed elevations showing the eastern side, again showing the western side. Existing proposed elevations showing the northern rear and south elevation of the proposed outbuilding. So the reason for this application is simply to reinstate the garage identical to that previously approved in 2024, as a planning application was submitted to vary the conditions of the parent application so related to approved plans, which involved the relocation of the garage from plot 2, which is the existing application site, to plot 1. It's important to note that the existing permission must be given significant weight, and that all previous material planning considerations have been considered. And therefore, it is considered that the proposal would fully accord with the development plan, being of an acceptable size, scale, height, form and appearance. The proposal would not result in unacceptable harm to the character or setting of the host dwelling house or the street scene, the amenities of neighbouring occupiers, the special protection area buffers, ancient woodland, straight trees, access to parking or upon biodiversity. The recommendation is that permission be granted subject to conditions and informatives as set out on pages 124 to 127 of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer. If I'm correct, we do not have any speakers registered. I just wanted to confirm that. However, I know that the ward councillor, Councillor Weldon, you wish to speak.
I'm sure you will be relieved to hear I will be exceptionally brief. All I want to say is I know that the residents have been very unhappy about this application, not this specific application, but the entire development of 3 dwellings, and also this particular application. When this came before the town council, we had a very lengthy discussion, and the town council was also very unhappy. However, we could not find any material grounds to object. So we did not object. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Gale first, then Councillor Munro.
Can I just ask, is there an upper story of the garage? Is that being used for some specific reason with the outdoor stairway to it and everything?
There's ancillary accommodation above the garage, so storage type thing. So it's ancillary to the residential, but as Justin has explained, this has already been granted permission.
Councillor Munro.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a little confused. Perhaps I shouldn't be. This garage, as a garage, has already been approved, and then that was withdrawn, I guess. So this is being reinstated. When that garage was approved, was it in the context of the extra development around it, or was it? Was the whole site different to what we're looking at now?
So this is a little bit of a technical exercise because permission has been granted for the whole scheme. So everything as Justin has presented to you. The scheme was then amended, so the original permission sort of fell away. And so they're going back to reinstate the permission that was granted in 2024. So nothing's changed other than they changed their minds and they changed it back again.
Just to be clear, the rest of the alterations to that block remain the same.
Yeah, so the proposed garage within this application remains the same in terms of size, scale, height, appearance.
I can see about the garage, but I'm just thinking if on the rest of that site, a previous application was for, as it might be, a smaller building, then that's a relevant consideration because the objections are about overdevelopment. So if what we're now being presented is a larger, more development on the rest of the site, plus the existing garage, that still means that the overall overdevelopment needs to be explored further. But if there hasn't been any increase in the rest of the block, then of course we don't need to worry about it. And this is a purely technical thing, as you said, and we can just pass it.
So just to confirm, this is purely technical. We're going back to where we were in 2024. So just rewind yourself. It was granted. We're asking you to grant it again.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know what Councillor Weldon's intention was, but by telling us that lots of people didn't like it and the town council doesn't like it, but they can't find any reason, planning reason to object to it, that would convince me that we should approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If I may just ask one myself, please. I believe the previous application, when you had the garage in there, the garage was described as having a loft room. This application, I think, refers to it to being ancillary accommodation. Could you confirm that that is the case, that this is now that it is an internal change as such, or is it a semantic change?
It's semantics. If you look at it in terms of what planning use are you granting, it is ancillary and it can be used for any purpose that's ancillary to that, the residential use. So it can be used for, I don't know, table tennis, putting your student.
Sure. I guess my supplementary to that, I think it's responding to some of the objections was, can there or should there be an ancillary accommodation condition added to the application?
It's not necessary because that's the use you are granting. If it then becomes something that isn't ancillary, that would be material change of use that require planning permission.
Thank you. So hearing no other questions, we shall move to the debate. Councillor Coburn.
Once again, I feel there is no debate at all. It's all been sort of very, very clearly explained to us why it's here and what we're looking at. No problem with it at all, except I look at those big windows and I think, how the heck do you clean them? Every time I drive past these houses and I just think, I struggle with windows, let alone things.
You employ a window cleaner, that's how you.
Well, you can do the outside, but what about getting them inside to do your inside windows? But that is totally irrelevant. But
Can a condition that the windows are kept clean?
it just raises my anxiety levels on behalf of residents when I drive past these houses. But I can't see there's any reason to refuse this whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Any other members wish to add comments? Hearing none, I shall then just read the, would the ward councillor like to speak again?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Therefore, the recommendation is to, subject to the conditions in the report, to grant permission for this application. So when the lights show, and as I believe they are, please vote.
The vote is unanimous in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you.
There are no applications not subject to public speaking. There is nothing further that requires exclusion of press and public, and so we're done.